Welcome to r/slash Am I the Devil, where OP straight up beats her child. Okay, I'm going to talk about today's sponsor, ExpressVPN, and why I honestly think that everybody should use a VPN. Nowadays, it seems like your entire life is online. Email, chat conversations, shopping history, private photos, late night video searches. Don't you want your data to be protected? ExpressVPN protects your data by making all your data anonymous before it hits the internet. Without a VPN, your internet service provider can see every site you visit online, and websites can sell your data to who knows who else. Protect your privacy, your search history, and your data with ExpressVPN. And then on top of it just being a good idea, ExpressVPN also unlocks extra shows on streaming platforms like Netflix, so it's just a win-win. If a TV show isn't available in your location, you can use ExpressVPN to set your location to a region where the show is unlocked and unlock the content. That's why I literally use ExpressVPN every day. If you want to try it out, you can get 3 months free by going to expressvpn.com/r/. Am I the butthole for punishing my daughter for not coming to my wedding? I got married last weekend in my parents' house, which has been in the family for generations. For health reasons, only immediate family was there. My 16-year-old daughter has been calling her new stepmom, who's 21, names like homewrecker and prostitute, and I've been patient with her. That's a 5-year age gap between the daughter and the stepmom. My daughter assumes I left her late mother because she had breast cancer. However, I did not leave her mother for having cancer. Nobody decides to have cancer. However, her late mother kept using her illness to devalue me and my sense of identity. She'd criticized the way that I was taking care of her, and even stuff like my hygiene or the cologne that I was wearing. She made me feel worthless. I felt like she was projecting her own insecurities by saying the smell of my cologne was disgusting. She never made an effort to keep herself up. And despite the fact that I objectively found her disgusting sometimes, I stuck by her until my self-esteem was destroyed. I would work hard closing deals all day and be acknowledged for my efforts at work. Yet I'd go home and she'd criticize and nag about every ounce of my being. I met her stepmom when I was in a dark place. She made me feel like I could be myself again. My wife made me feel unattractive and sexless, and with my new wife, I felt alive. Just the fact that she appreciated me and felt physical chemistry with me made me want to do anything for her, to want to provide for her. That's when I decided not to BS my wife anymore and filed for divorce. Since then, my daughter's relatives from her mom's side have been poisoning her against me. Last weekend, when I and her mom went to the site of the wedding early, we expected to see her drive to the wedding later. But instead, she ended up going to stay with her aunt. Everybody asked where she was, and there was chaos from my side of the family locating her. As punishment, I took her car and allowance away, and have taken her phone away until I feel that she can learn to be respectful towards someone I very much love. And that it'll be impossible for her to do that if she keeps having to hear from her late mom's side of the family. My parents have called and said that I'm being too harsh. However, even when things are tough, I feel that I cannot let a child of mine believe they can just do whatever they want. Am I the butthole? You know, I was kind of expecting OP to paint a somewhat sympathetic picture of himself. Obviously, when people are telling their own stories, they, make themselves look good. But his argument was really, she didn't like my cologne, so I had no choice but to bang a 21-year-old. If I had to guess, the reason why the wife didn't like the cologne was probably because she was on chemo and the smell made her nauseous, but that's just a guess. I hope that when OP marries this new girl, he amends his wedding vows. I promise to take you in health, but not sickness, let's be honest. Our next Reddit post is from r/parenting. How to help my daughter get past childhood abuse. So I've recently been working things out with my 16-year-old daughter. When she was around 5 or 6 years old, I started hitting her and said many things that I now regret over grades, piano, etc. Before that, she was very extroverted and outgoing, but then she started to become extremely introverted and had a lot of trouble making friends and socializing. Her friends were awful, and she got bullied a lot in school. Now, we have a very competitive social circle, and everyone else's kids were extremely intelligent academic-wise, and constantly had all A+s, while our daughter had C's and D's. Of course, none of the other parents hit their kids, which we now regrets. We went through some of the things that really upset her, and here are the top ones. One of the things she's mentioned that really scared her was this. Once, in grade 3, she threatened to kill herself after a very bad math test. We were at my mom and dad's house, and I was very upset that she threatened to kill herself over nothing. So I gave her a pair of scissors and gave her 2 options. Either she killed herself and then I'd kill myself after, or I'd kill her and kill myself after. Once again, I regret this. Yo, this one's wild, you guys. Okay. I wasn't expecting this. She also mentioned that I would chase her around the house with chopsticks or hit or yell at her in front of other parents and kids, which made her feel very embarrassed in front of the childhood friends she grew up with. Another instance was how she wasn't allowed to cry too much at home or complain about the bullying. In grade 4, some kids made some racist remarks at her, and she came home crying and wishing they died and called them B-words. I didn't react in the best way and hit her for it. And she mentioned she had difficulty opening up to me afterwards about her problems. Finally, she thought our family was experiencing massive financial issues and a divorce. When she was maybe in grade 5 or so, my husband lost millions of dollars in a poorly thought out business venture. Understandably, I argued with him many times, and unfortunately did throw some things while she was around. I threatened a divorce, and during this time, she spent a lot of time with the couple that owned a laundromat nearby, and she mentioned that sometimes she wished they were her parents instead. Another thing she never really recovered from due to this experience is how she dresses very poorly and economizes as if she were living on food stamps. When we initially talked about this, she mentioned she didn't like my attitude. I kept telling her I could atone for it with my death, and I did get quite emotional. And I broke down and started crying, telling her that it was all my fault. She mentioned I sounded sarcastic and not at all sincere, and that it was tough how she had to comfort me instead, especially since she was the one who had went through all this. I'm not proud of it, but I get emotional whenever we have talks about this and lose my composure. She has a lot of difficulty making friends still. Most people assume that she comes from a very poor and uncultured family because she constantly dresses in ratty clothing that look like they came from a donation bin, and is always very quiet, which is especially detrimental since she goes to a preppy private school. Neither she nor her brother are close with their father, who is constantly away on business or golfing trips, and they were both at some point of their lives raised by a nanny, which may have caused them to further alienate themselves from us. She prefers the company of animals over humans too, and this bothers me, and I have no idea how to separate her from her pets. When she's upset, she spends hours in the pet's room instead of talking with people, even though she has severe allergies to her animals. It's also hurtful. Sometimes I feel like she loves her rabbit more than me. Since I've stopped hitting her, our relationship has improved, somewhat, and so have her grades and social life. But she's becoming increasingly rude and disobedient towards me and her daughter, often lashing out or having temper tantrums over the smallest things. She's also paranoid about people standing outside her line of sight, and often skips school, screams when people enter her room, and tries to get them out as soon as possible. Or she has panic attacks, none of which had occurred while I'd been hitting her and yelling at her. I realized that I'd made a mistake after her brother moved to another country, despite her father and I's displeasure, and we don't wish to lose another child. A psychologist diagnosed her with anxiety, depression, ADD, autism, a memory problem, and some other learning disorders. But my daughter mentioned that she didn't want to make a big deal and downplayed a lot of her issues in front of the psychologist for fear that it would affect her career in the future. I do admit that I didn't take the diagnosis seriously at first. My husband and I didn't do any research and dismissed it as a way for the psychologist to make more money. But my daughter has been getting increasingly more agitated and often isolates herself in her room for many hours at a time, or had mental breakdowns, or mentioned that she wanted to commit suicide over math, which has never been her strongest subject. Thankfully, she passed and is no longer taking that subject. One thing that bothers me is how normal she acts around other people. She could definitely pass for a normal teenager now, although she was quite strange in her pre-teen years. However, at home, she's a nightmare to deal with all her screaming and paranoia. She also stopped playing the piano on the grounds that she had too many bad memories associated with it. And even when I try to coax her into it, she says she's uncomfortable playing, especially with people around. Can anyone provide advice on how to fix our relationship? This is like someone comes into a car repair shop with nothing but a flaming tire and says, "Hey, can you fix my car? Any advice on how to drive this thing again?" No. There's no coming back from this. You're a bad parent. Your daughter can't wait to move out. I don't blame her. And once she does move out, she'll probably go no contact, which is what I would do in that situation. Oh man, down in the comments, OP is defending herself. We're trying to make amends. We're buying her so many nice things and offering to take her on a lot of trips. She keeps declining and pushing us away. I raised her and provided for her. We've never neglected any of her physical needs. How about the need for safety? And she's always been able to get most of the material goods she wants. OP honestly thinks it's okay that I hit my daughter because I can just buy back her affection. Our next Reddit post is from rSlash.relationships. My husband, who's 33, behaved inappropriately with his young niece, who's 4, and minimized it to his parents. I'm a 32-year-old woman, and I'm torn between protecting kids and deciding if my marriage can be saved. Yesterday, I directly witnessed my husband in a situation with his young niece that crossed a serious boundary. I saw him become physically aroused, and instead of creating distance immediately, he allowed the situation to continue for over 15 minutes. I was in shock and kept trying to convince myself that I wasn't seeing what I was seeing, until it became undeniable. I left the room to avoid causing a scene. When I confronted him, he was initially defensive and rationalized that he panicked and didn't know what to do. I pushed back on that, and he admitted that he didn't move her because even though he was ashamed it was happening, he knows it was because, oh my God. He knows it was because it felt good, and later said he didn't know what was wrong with him to risk everything for that moment. I told him he needed to tell his brother and sister-in-law exactly what happened. He panicked and said he didn't want to, then conceded that he would. Afterwards, I learned from his parents that they were told a very different, minimized version, framed as a misunderstanding, and I was treated as if I were overreacting. When I challenged that, his father aggressively insulted me, disowned me, and dismissed what I was saying. I don't believe my husband was forthcoming with them. If he had shared what he admitted to me, I don't think they'd respond that way. He says he's apologetic and will start therapy, but I feel gaslit, unsafe, and betrayed. I don't know if I can ever trust him again or consider having children around him. For me, accountability is non-negotiable. He must be honest with the family and take full responsibility if there's any chance of moving forward. Here's where I'm deeply conflicted. Part of me wants to try to work on the marriage because he says, and seems to be remorseful and is proactively organizing his therapy sessions. I genuinely love him with everything in me, and I chose life with him. Another part of me is devastated that I froze in the moment and didn't intervene more forcefully. I have childhood trauma, and I know what it feels like to wish an adult had acted for me and for my little cousin. Holding both truths, wanting repair with a man I love but no longer trust, and grieving my freeze response is tearing me up. There's a lot of troubling things in this story. The guy's response to a kid, the fact that OP sat and watched it happen for 15 minutes, but I'm really disturbed by the fact that no one has told the parents of the girl. That was rSlash, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.